So I suppose when speaking about decolonisation, I always feel like it's important to say that this will look so different depending on where we find ourselves in the world. Like, obviously, there are tools of colonisation that have been applied globally, to remove people from a relationship with the land, from relationship to one another, from relationship to ourselves. And to me, that like process of decolonisation is a process of reorientating ourselves back toward relationship with all of those things. Um, and that's why it's so important to talk about when we talk about like severance from nature, from land, even the idea that we use this word rewilding, or nature connection. It's like to speak about that without looking at why is it that we've come to be even having these conversations. Why is it that we are hungering for this sense of connection? Why is it that there is like such a you know extinction of so many species at the moment? It's like all of these things have their roots in this process of removing people from the land and from their connection with that. So, like for example, in Ireland, Ireland was used as a kind of testing ground for many of these colonial tools to remove people from the ground, to remove people from their traditions, whether that's like the language that they speak, the musical instruments that they play, all of these ways of relating with one another. Um, and then that has grown into capitalism now. So this way of like we have severed people from the land, from seeing everything as animate and having spirit and being alive, because if we really truly saw that, then the pain of what is happening now would be so great that it wouldn't be allowed to happen. We would be fighting so much more for what we know to be our wider relations. So yeah, it's like that was important to happen. That severance had to happen in this, it's kind of difficult to call it like a plan, but in this process, so that when we reach now, um, yeah, like this idea of like extracting from the earth is so like difficult for so many of us and hard to look at for so many of us, but is also so normalized by the systems that we live in. Like so normalized that there are inequalities, so normalized that there is yeah, like this just vast disconnection from our own bodies as well, the intelligence of our bodies, or like this wider connection with the unseen world. So yeah, I think it's a really crucial. Um, it's kind of it interweaves into everything, and if we are to come back to like this way of relating to the world, it's like we can't skip over this process of looking at and tending to the wound so that it may be healed in generations to come. I love there's an collective called Gesturing Towards Decolonial Futures, and they speak about like engaging with this work. They often put up lots of warning parts before you engage because they're like, are you actually ready to engage with this? Like, are you suffering from mental health difficulties? Because actually it can be so untethering for us to kind of turn to face these things and to see the vastness of what has happened. And yeah, I mean, for me, that's like the place of the work that I do, which is that reconnection place as well, that we don't just stop at the pain and feel the wound and let it stay open, but that there are like processes that like, so many Indigenous people have had to engage with as well in order to retrieve and revive their practices and their knowledge. So yeah, it's difficult and essential work. I think on the one hand, we're beyond peak at the moment, so in terms of, these how these technologies are actually powered, it's like we don't really have a way for that to continue, like even things like renewable energies are relying on the extraction of different minerals from the earth as well. And, so much of the data that we're using, Ireland has so many data centers, and the amount of water that it uses and poisons and puts back into the land, it's just, there's no kind of world in which this is sustainable to keep going in this way. And I suppose, having said that, it has been an incredible tool. Like any tool is, any tool can be abused, any tool can be used as a weapon. So it's like the ways in which, we can have a conversation now, and we can connect with people across the world. We can join up our ideas and our knowledge. We can find out, all these digitized records of, our folklore. We can connect in so many ways through space and time through these technologies. And yet it's like important that we don't rely entirely upon them, that it is never a replacement for face-to-face contact, for being engaged with your local community, for learning how to organize locally and respond locally. So yeah, for the times that we have it, I pray that we know how to use it wisely, although I can see that that's not happening. Yeah, it's like there's still there's so much work to be done at our own doorsteps as well. So growing up, I was really isolated from learning my native language, which is Gaelic or Irish. Um, and that was for a variety of political reasons of where I grew up and what it meant to learn the language. And throughout my this process of reconnecting to the land, to me now it's inseparable for me as learning how to light a fire without matches, or knowing how to nourish myself from the earth. It's like I need to have the language to speak about that, because so many Indigenous languages are pre-colonial languages, are spoken by ancestors who were in deep relationship with the earth over thousands of years. So Irish is, like they say, 3,000 plus years old, and so many of those words will have older roots as well. So for me to find words that connect me to my place, like I probably just have to give you some words. Like one of my favorite words is CEP, so CEAP, and it's the blacksmith's block. That over time of the blacksmith hammering on the block, it becomes really embedded into the earth below it. And that's the same word given to that feeling of belonging, that sense of belonging that you feel when you're completely embedded into a community. So it's like these kind of words that, like, English just does not meet those kind of needs, because it's a trade language, and it's a language of in the way that it's used. Like, it's a very beautiful language, and we can express like so many deep ideas through it as well. But that kind of like deep rooted, embedded into a landscape, for me, it's like the Irish language is a well source of that relationship. It's like a direct line, back. So I'm kind of simultaneously I'm learning this language, and there are these words, but we can say the words without the embodied feeling. So how do we bring the two together, that, we can feel those things again, not just think that it's a nice word that we put in a museum and look at it and like romanticize it, but like, how do we actually come to embody those things again? And I feel like, Indigenous languages around the world give us this feeling of like deep rooted belonging with the earth, and these, just like pre-colonial ways of relating to the land, to our communities, to the unseen world. Yeah, it's really like just there's so much there.